Welcome to the December 14th, 2021 City Council meeting. This is a special City Council meeting. There will not be one next week on the 21st. And Ms. Hilbrick, will you please call roll?
Councilman De La Garza?
I am present.
Mayor Pro Tem Solis?
Here.
Councilman Crocker?
Here.
Councilwoman Scott?
Here.
Councilman Young?
Here.
Councilman Lofgren?
Here.
And Mayor Blacknight.
Here. All right, at this time, if you would, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiances and then followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor thy Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. All right, we're into announcements and reminders, and I have one announcement. There will be a holiday schedule for city offices over the next couple of weeks. It'll be posted on Facebook sites as well as the city's website. So if you're wondering if anybody's going to be open or what they're doing, please go to those websites. Also, trash pickup will be continued as normal, so there shouldn't be any deviation from that schedule. Do you have anything else, Mr. Garza, under announcements, reminders?
No, sir.
Okay, we're going to go into public and employee recognition. I have two tonight. Do you have any?
No, sir.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go. This is a long time coming. We wanted to present a plaque to Dale Fowler, our longtime CEO of Victoria Economic Development Corporation, and it reads, "In recognition of loyal and dedicated service in the area of economic development through work with the Victoria Economic Development Corporation and the Victoria Sales Tax Development Corporation from 2000 to 2021.
Wow. Feel free to say a few words.
Mayor, council members, Mr. Manager, thank you for this honor. And I just want you to know I was always very honored to represent the community of Victoria abroad as we strove to increase economic development. And I'm more optimistic than ever that Victoria is going to continue to be successful. And thank you. And I expect your continued support of economic development efforts for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. The other one I have is in recognition from the Texas Youth Hunting Program, and it's for Riverside Park, and it reads, "In appreciation for the invaluable support you have shown for the Texas Youth Hunting Program. Thank you for the donation of the use of your land, resources, time, and hospitality, ensuring the future of hunting and conservation of the outdoors." And I wanted to present this to Kimberly Zigmont, who really spearheaded the whole program that was held this past weekend. She did a phenomenal job. She deserves a big round of applause because the kids that participated, they were all super respectful. Their parents were wonderful. It was neat going out there on Friday, and they were kind of shy and timid. And by the end of the weekend, everybody was best buds. And we sat around Saturday around a campfire and told, what was good about the day, what was bad. Most people had nothing but good to say. Some of the bad things were they wish there were more kids involved. And I want to thank the community partners that pitched in to make this a no-cost event to those participants, as well as the numerous volunteers throughout our community and through the city, too, that manned gates. Or we had a gentleman come out with his daughter. She was a hunt guide, and he cooked. It was just a fantastic event all around, and I really, really appreciate everything that Ms. Zigmont has done for it. And this belongs in your office.
No speech?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much. It was a really great program that we ran. As the mayor said, we had 6 really wonderful kids that came out, and it was really fun to see them just kind of hover by their parent on Friday night, and then after the long day of waking up at 5 a.m. And then cheering on each other when each other really succeeded, or encouraging each other when they something didn't happen in their favor. So it was really great to watch each other bond and help each other out. It was great. And I do want to say a big thanks to Officer Brian Knief. He was out there volunteering his time, but he really helped make sure that we kept the park secure. And Barry Huebner, he came out that weekend as well. He's with the surface water treatment plant, and they help guide with the kids and teach them a lot of their knowledge too. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One other thing, we partnered with a nonprofit Christian-based hunting organization, and all the deer that were harvested, whatever meat that the participants didn't take off the deer, has been donated to, it's called,
Trinity Oaks.
thank you, Trinity Oaks. And over the last 10 years, they've handed out 500,000 pounds of meat to food banks, needy and homeless shelters. So that's where the venison will be processed through and handed out. So,
Wonderful.
Thank you.
you bet. All right, any other public or employee recognitions?
No, sir.
Okay, items from council. I know, Ms. Scott, you want to pull D3?
Yes, it's much less exciting than all the other announcements, but
Okay, anybody else have anything? All right. We'll close items from council. Citizens communication, I don't have any notices. I hope Mr. Von der Ross doing all right. I've not seen him miss a meeting in a
Yeah,
while,
I
so
know.
wish him a Merry Christmas.
we threw him off with the schedule. That's a problem.
Okay,
He'll be here next week.
we'll close citizens communication at this time and go into items with public hearing, item C1.
Item C1 is a public hearing for the 2020 Cdbg Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the 2020 Consolidated Annual Performance Report, or CAPER, is really a companion document to our annual action plan. So most of the items in this report coincide with our 2020 action plan, which is 2020 plan year is actually 2021 fiscal year for the city. So that's always a bit confusing. So what is a CAPER report? It's basically a year-end report that shows the progress that we've made on the annual action plan and reports all the funds that were expended over that fiscal year. We do require to have a public hearing and make sure that any comments that are made are submitted as part of our submission process to HUD. But it does not require any formal action from council. It's just a report. So this is our 2020-2021 City of Victoria CDBG programs. Administration, of course, is us staff administering the grant. We have one staff member, our community development planner, that is paid out of administration. And so we have $44,000 was remaining in that. And so those funds will go to our unallocated amount, and we will reallocate them in the next annual year program. So our roof rehabilitation program, we actually have held off on that. We had a lot of COVID money to spend and a lot of extra programs. So we've tied that with the critical repair program that we are partnering with Habitat to. So this annual action, 21 annual action plan allocated that $125,000. We're taking this $50,000 for roofs, and we're going to kind of administer that program together. And so we just received from Habitat their signed copy. I thought we would have it early enough to execute through Jesus' office, but we will have that executed in the next day or two. And so they'll be doing the intake for us on that program. So we still have $50,000 remaining in that. In our demolition program, we have $51,000 remaining. We've demoed 9 homes, but half of that $51,000 is actually encumbered, and we'll be demoing some more homes shortly. Our public improvement project, which is a street lighting project, We have added new street lights to the Bluff Street area, kind of by the park. And we are very lucky that we got that in before the 2020 census, because that census tract actually fell out of an eligible area. So we got that in the nick of time. And then we have done some upgrades, and we are working with AEP to figure out where the next batch of streetlights to change out to LED will be. And then we did complete out the park lighting project, which was new solar lights in Pine Street and Queen City parks. So we have a 2019-2020 public facility project, which was Perpetual Help Community Resource Center renovation project. It's a property on Wan Lin. They're actually made a lot more progress, but usually they will do a large drawdown at the end. This is a reimbursable grant, so we expect this month to receive probably a 50% drawdown, because I know that their contractor has the permits and has been actively working. And so we hope that that entire project will be finished in the spring. These are our public service agency programs. As you can see, we have very little funds that were returned to us and that will go into the unallocated pot to be reallocated. And that really is because of COVID. The utility assistance, community action agency received so much funding from COVID that they didn't need to help as many households. And then same with the food bank. They had so much funding through COVID resources that they didn't need the annual Cdbg funding. And as that funding dries up, as we move past the pandemic, they will again probably rely on this funding. So the public comment period ran from November 30th to tonight. We will see if we have any public comments, input those into the HUD system, IDIS system, and hit submit on the CAPER tomorrow. But we do have until December 29th. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
What was the total encumbrance that we're going to have for next year? It was just that first line item, the admin?
No, so this was from the 2020 plan. I can get you the exact number, but in August we allocated, I think it was about $600,000 that we have for this fiscal year that we're in currently.
Okay, thank you.
Plus these funds that are left over.
Right. So we will actually allocate these remaining funds in plan year 22, so next fiscal year.
Okay.
Julie, can you really quickly, I know it's in the AIM, but can you verbalize for the benefit of Councilmember Crocker why we're even bringing this item to council?
So yes, it's basically a requirement of the CDBG program. So every year HUD, of course, as an entitlement city, gives us funding that we allocate through an annual action plan process. And then at the end of the fiscal year, we have to report on how we spent that money. And so that's what those numbers reported. And then we also have a lot of public hearings process in the annual action plan when we're allocating the money. And then, of course, now we don't usually get a lot of public comments, but occasionally we do. And HUD's really big on making sure that we are open with the process. And that's where we have there's no action, but we do need to come and report it in a public forum and allow for a public hearing. And so it's lengthy with the federal government.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Fulgram. At this time, I'll open a public hearing on item C1. If anybody wishes to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone. Okay, seeing no one get up to speak, we will close the public hearing on item C2 and go to C1 and go to C2.
Item C2 is an ordinance adopting a new reapportionment plan, thereby revising city council member district boundaries in response to the 2020 census.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I'm pleased this evening to bring to you for consideration a redistricting or reapportionment plan and map for potential adoption tonight. Before I do so, I'd like to thank the members of the committee that you formed to review the census data and work with the outside law firm to bring this plan to you. Tommy Taylor, Callie Fromme, J.R. Amaya, Debbie Escalante, and Emmett Alvarez met for multiple meetings to review data, to go over the maps and make recommendations back to the law firm. Their work is commendable because that data can be very dense, let's say. There's a lot of information that goes into reviewing this and deciding what is going to be best for our community. And they did a great work to bring that. I'd like to also reintroduce you to Resin Pullen, the outside attorney from the law firm of Borquez, the Borquez Law Firm, who will go over the presentation tonight and make the recommendation for you going forward.
Thank you, Thomas. Good evening, Mayor and City Council and City staff. I just want to take time to reemphasize what Thomas said about the redistricting committee. Great group of citizens that were well-informed and engaged throughout this whole process and actually made it a lot smoother. So thank you for appointing those members. As Thomas introduced, my name is Resin Pullum here on behalf of the Borquez Law Firm. And today we're going to talk about very briefly the initial assessment map, which is your existing districts. And then we're going to dive into that draft map that we have here prepared for you today in that ordinance. Just as a brief overview, the city charter calls for 6 council members, 1 to be elected from each of the single member districts and 2 to be elected from the super districts, 5 and 6. Under the U.S. Census data, we were able to get your total populations for each of the districts. And after doing the math, which is seen here on this slide, your total maximum deviation is coming in above that 10% maximum permissible range, exactly coming in at 26.90%, which is causing us to go through this process. Here is a graphic of District 1 as well as a snapshot of some of the data that the redistricting committee had to consider. You'll see the total population as well as the total voting age population for each of these maps. One of the things that we want to highlight in these graphics is especially the Hispanic population, where they're holding a majority in districts 1 and 2, and then a plurality proportion in District 4. So as we go through this process, we've looked at each of the districts, making sure not to retrogress any of those minority voting standards, and these maps and these numbers allowed us to do such. Again, you're seeing the population data for District 4, and this is just to kind of reorient you with how the current districts are drawn so that you'll be able to more acutely identify the changes under Draft Map A. Here is a representation of the Hispanic population for the city of Victoria, and just showing us where those densities are occurring along the city lines. It helps us to spot those issues, like we said, especially the ones that deal with the U.S. voting sections and those that are having us consider race. Likewise, we did the same for the Black population, where we are able to spotlight in committee. Draft Map A accomplishes all of those redistricting criteria in which we've settled and established by City Council resolution. And here is the population tables for that Draft Map A. One thing that we immediately want to spotlight is the total maximum deviation under this plan. We're going from what it was now to 7.32% under this draft map plan, which gets us that substantially equal population amongst all the districts that we are looking for in this process. More specifically, what changed, you'll see here in this iteration. On your left, you'll see what the proposed map plan is changing for draft map A, and on your right, you'll see the existing boundaries map. Here we see District 3 losing a little bit of its population to District 4, and namely that voting precinct that is voting District 25. District 4 is picking up just a slight bit of that portion. So you're seeing where it's coming in, kind of making a neat box there in that area from District 3. With District 3 being one of the more populous districts here, it's necessary for us to get some of the population out of District 3. Here, you're seeing a little bit of change in Districts 1 and 2. Namely, District 1 is picking up voting precinct number 30, And District 2 is picking up voting precinct number 6. Both of those voting precincts coming out of District 4. So there's a little bit of give and take between those Districts 4 and 3. Now, this slide simply shows you a comparison of your total population for the existing districts on top, and then the total population under this proposed draft map A. One of the things that we want to highlight in this slide, namely, are those proportions under the Hispanic population and Black populations. Those percentages that you're seeing, we're making sure not to retrogress those by a standard of about 5%, or 6%. And we're still maintaining those majorities in the protected minority groups, namely the Hispanic population. They held a majority in Districts 1 and District 2. You're still seeing that majority maintained under draft map A in Districts 1 and 2. In District 4, you're seeing the Hispanic population held what was a plurality influence. That plurality is still being maintained under this draft map A and according to those legal principles that we've established. Here's another snapshot of the comparison of the existing district's voting age population as compared to the voting age population under this proposed plan. So just more acute information that was considered by the redistricting committee whenever we put our minds together to come up with this plan.
Would you go back to that one for a second?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm still trying to find the voting age on that one.
Yes, so the data that you're seeing is all citizens within each district broken down by demographic that are of voting age in that district. So for, let's say, the Hispanic population in District 1, you're seeing 6,912 citizens of voting age, and it makes up about 58.84% of that population in that district.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So just an overall view of what this plan does. It accomplishes that total maximum deviation that we're looking for underneath 10%. It gets us to 7.32%, which also kind of takes into account future annexation and growth for the city of Victoria. All of the district's boundaries were redrawn in those ways that you saw in the earlier slides. You kind of see the numbers that each district is either picking up or losing. And as a matter of fact, District 3 was the only district that actually lost a significant amount of population. And due to that being the most overly populated district using 2020 census data. As I said, there was no substantial retrogression in the minority voting power under this draft map plan. And we believe that it meets all of those legal criteria that we've established. And now before you today is the actual ordinance that would be adopting this draft map A plan. And what is remaining as a product for our firm to you is that final report that we would submit to the DOJ, but however is now just being submitted to you for your consideration. With that being the end of my presentation, I'll take any questions that you may have about the draft map.
Mayor, while you guys are considering any questions you may have, I want to also say that this presentation was not included in your council packet. I recognize that. And in order to make sure that the public has access to this, I'm going to be posting this presentation on the city's redistricting website, victoriatx.gov. I believe it was /redistricting, which is also located on the city attorney's website. I'll go ahead and add this presentation with all of those very detailed tables on it so that the public can review that data as well. Remember, this is a first vote only. Since this is an ordinance, we'll have a second and third reading of this ordinance at our next regular meeting on January 4th.
Okay. Well, thank you. With no questions, I want to open item C2.
I had a quick question.
Okay.
Yes.
The voting precinct that is split,
Yes.
what does that mean and how is that handled?
So with that minute change, we made some room for ourselves in that resolution, and with the city of Victoria able to elect out of any, or to vote in any precinct, that small, precise change had to be done in order to get that substantial balance. It wouldn't have produced a substantial balance had we took a whole voting precinct out of that district and put it into what was District 4, I believe. And so we had to kind of go in and do more so a change at the census block level rather than the voting precinct level.
And then when people go to vote, the records, the people there monitoring it won't have any problem getting them the correct ballot, things like that.
Because we have to submit this map to Victoria County, they will coincide the voting precincts with our map, and they'll be sending out those registration cards and info that will tell people what precincts they are currently in and how to vote.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Just out of curiosity, were there any citizens maps presented? I know that was part of the process, that citizens could submit maps. I was just wondering if anybody did.
No, sir, we did not have any citizen maps to consider at this point.
All right, well, thank you. I'll open item C2 up for a public hearing, or open the public hearing. Anybody? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing on item C2 and entertain any motions y'all wish to make.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item C2. Is there any further discussion? Thanks again to those citizens that served on the committee. We appreciate you saying yes when we called. And your input's greatly valued. Thank you.
Thank you.
So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion C2, or item C2 carries. Consent agenda.
Item D1 is the adoption of minutes of the regular meeting held on December 7th, 2021. Item D2 is a resolution approving the annual purchase of 25 sets of structural firefighting coat, pants, PPE for the Victoria Fire Department from MES Municipal Emergency Services in the amount of $79,475. Item D4 is a resolution authorizing a grant application to the Lone Star Operation in an approximate amount of $136,380 and designating the city manager as the authorized official. Item D5 is a resolution appointing or reappointing members to the Food Establishment Appeals Board. Item D6 is a resolution reappointing members to the Building and Standards Commission. Item D7 is a resolution approving the TCEQ annual water system fee for the city's public water system in the amount of $72,987.95. Item D8 is a resolution approving a professional services agreement with Victoria Engineering Incorporated, DBA Urban Engineering, for design services for the high service water connection project in the amount of $65,000. Item D9 is a resolution approving a professional services agreement with Victoria Engineering Incorporated, DBA Urban Engineering, for design services for the Laurent Street Water Line Replacement Project in the amount of $165,000. Item D10 is a resolution awarding the 2020-2021 sanitary sewer line cleaning project to All Points Inspection Services Incorporated of Weberville, Texas, for their low proposal of $78,983.65. Item D11 is a resolution approving a contract with the Environmental Improvements Incorporated for the halogen safety shut-off system in the amount of $110,194. Item D12 is an ordinance amending the 2021-2022 budget of the City of Victoria and carrying forward encumbrances outstanding at September 30th, 2021. This item is on second and third reading. And item D13 is an ordinance designating 210.9 acres within the jurisdiction of the City of Victoria as a tax increment financing district to be known as Reinvestment Zone 1, City of Victoria, Texas. And this item is also on second and third reading.
Thank
Great
you, Ms.
job.
Gilbert. Good job, yeah.
I move to adopt the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, first and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved pending item D3.
Item E1 is a
D3.
Going back to D, I'm skipping here. Item D3 is a resolution accepting a donation from the Cloyd and Ethel Lee Tracy Foundation for improvements at Ethel Lee Tracy Park in the amount of $70,000.
I asked this item to be pulled because I need to abstain on the voting. I serve on the board.
Okay, thank you.
I move we accept item C3.
D3.
D3. Oh, yeah. D3.
Got Got a second over here? All right. All those in favor of D3?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Item E1.
Item
Thank
E1
you.
is a resolution approving a professional services agreement with CivilCorp LLC for design services for College Park Street and utility reconstruction project in the amount of $919,000.
Tonight, what I'd like to do is kind of do a brief summary of each of these projects at once versus each independent. I want to thank you for last Friday's meeting, the CIP meeting. This is the culmination of moving forward with our 2022 projects. The first one is College Park Street and Utility Reconstruction Project. Its consultant is CivilCorp LLC, not CivilTech, and Ben Galvan is here representing them. The scope for the design is water, sewer, storm sewer replacement cleaning. We want to continue with that program and follow our master drainage plan. Curb and gutter and street reconstruction. Linear footage is about 12,000 feet in the neighborhood. Design cost is $919,000. And utilities, the estimated cost is set for 2023 to begin a utility portion at $3.7 million, and in the street following that in 2024 at $5.1 million. That's a vicinity map. College Park is the area behind or next to St. Joe, in that area bounded by Main Street, Navarro, and Hiller Street. The next project is Tanglewood Utility Street Project, Phase 1. Consultant is Urban Engineering, and Tom Schmidt is here. Ray and Matt had to pick him because he's the last man standing for the company. The scope is, again, water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer replacement and cleaning, and then curb gutter and street. Linear footage is 12,000 feet. Project design cost is $645,000. And the utility cost, I'm going to go to that slide right there. Well, let me go back. The map shows two different colors. The orange color is what was decided in the 2022 CIP for the construction cost to go forward in 23 and 24. As we discussed on Friday, the blue is an additional section that we're looking at. Y'all are reviewing the cost to determine whether we move forward. The design is going to encompass both the orange and the blue. We're going to get that design. At one point, Tanglewood is going to get done, so we want to go ahead and incorporate the design. What we did is, what I broke it out into colors, is the adopted 2022 CIP utility was for 23 is $2.13 million, and the street for 2024 was $2.6. If we add that blue, it's an additional cost of utilities at 2.1 and an additional cost for the street in 24 at 2.7. The next project is Dairy Road Reconstruction. The consultant is Ardura Group Incorporated, and Derek Neiser is representing them here. Scope on this project is, again, similar to the others. It's water, storm sewer replacement and or cleaning. Mostly it's addition because it's an open ditch section. Curb and gutter, street, which will include sidewalks. Linear footage is 2,700 feet. Design cost is $425,000, and the estimated utility the cost for 2023 to rebuild a street, including the storm sewer and curb and gutter, is $2.7 million. And as we discussed Friday, there is a 16-inch water main. They're going to do some preliminary survey. They're going to get the surveying done, get some cross sections of what's existing. Then they're going to set that centerline street grade. And that really is going to set the tone of how do we determine, do we need to relocate that water line? Can we leave it in place? And before we get into a lot of design and construction further on, but that's going to be the process is they're not going to get too far along in the design and say, oh, we need to do it. So we'll know early on, probably March, April, as they get the preliminary going. That's the vicinity map. It goes from basically Hoovar, a little bit south of Hoovar, all the way to the end, which is Salem Drive. The last project that I'm going to present is Bonaire and Morningside edition. And again, it's CivilCorp. The scope is water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, replacement or cleaning, curb and gutter, and street. Linear footage in this neighborhood is 21,500 feet. It's a lot larger. And the design cost is $1.3 million. The utility cost is set for 2023 at $4.1 million. The street is broken down into 2 years because it's a very large project. We wanted to break it down. 2024 is $3.4 million, and then 2025 is $5.3 million. And this neighborhood is bounded by Loma Vista, Red River, Laurent, and Ben Jordan. Phase 1 is going to get that what I would call the west side, and then Phase 2 will cover the east side. And I'll answer any questions. And thank you for your support on all these projects.
I have a question about Dairy Road. Who did the engineering of Hoovar and the north part of Dairy Road?
That would have been Urban.
The sewer runs, or the water line runs underneath the bridge, is that correct?
That is an old raw water line, and that's no longer in service. It's old.
Well, the water line that you're going to that you're talking about, you may have to move or replace. Where does it run from where to where?
It runs from basically the loop. It came out of Plant 4 that was up at Dairy and Hoovar, and it goes all the way down to Salem. It goes under Whispering Creek.
It goes under.
It goes under. That line that's attached to the bridge is an old line.
So we don't know what the line underneath Whispering Creek, or when they did the northern part, did they replace any water line?
They were able to design the street and adjust that center line grade so that we didn't have to relocate that line. It was deep enough, and they were able to adjust. That's why I'm saying we got to look at that grade, because if we can get the cover over that line, we don't want to replace it. It's an excellent line. It's in good shape. It's held up. We've had no breaks on it. Our utility crews I've talked to them, and they say, just please, it's a great line.
I know that they'll come up with the drainage, but right now, some of it drains into Whispering Creek and some of it drains into Salem Road. Is that correct, the way it is now?
I believe it does. Some of it's very flat, and they'll figure out which way to take it. Salem is probably, I would say the storm sewer on Salem is very shallow. We've noticed that as I've driven Salem and looked at storm sewer inlets. There's not much that's going to make it to Salem.
Thank you.
So from your presentation, it looks like our citizens can expect a lot of torn up streets and utilities in '23, and then we'll get around to paving them again in '24.
Right.
And it's not really getting around to, that's just the way it has to happen.
And it'll follow soon. As soon as we get through with those utilities and they're wrapping up, we can hit that street so that they're following behind. So.
Don't forget that we have a residential street program that comes in fiscal year '23 as well.
Right.
Which of course is mill and overlays, seal coats. So there is street work taking place in fiscal year '23. It just doesn't necessitate, it's not being talked about today.
It's just very exciting, but progress kind of impedes our traffic, and we all grumble about it, but it is progress. And
Exactly.
great.
Well, I'd like to thank the body up here and for past bodies that have sat here. And the reason why that's done is it was very intentional with our debt. So exciting is exactly the correct word for many of these neighborhoods to have new roads and new utilities. So.
Yes. And I thank staff, but also council for letting staff make the presentation for Tanglewood. And we haven't taken the vote yet, so I'm anxious. But I'm hopeful and certainly supportive of the change and the increase to get that neighborhood tackled sooner.
All right.
Thank you. All
Thank
good
you.
comments. Thanks, Mr. Gill. Motion time?
Can we adopt E1 through, I move we adopt E1 through E4.
I second the motion. Do we have to have them separate?
Do we have to have a separate vote?
No, we're good with it.
We're good with it?
No, sir, I think that's clear. Since the individual items are printed on the agenda, the public knows what you're referring to when you make that motion. I think that satisfies the requirements of Robert's rules.
Okay. So let me just, so we're clear, the motion is for items E1 through E4, which is College Park Street Utility Reconstruction Project, the design services for it, the design services for Tanglewood Utility Street Project Phase 1, design services for Dairy Road Reconstruction Project, and the design services for Bonaire and Morningside Addition Street and Utility Reconstruction Project. Correct? You have a motion and a second? Any further discussion?
Just that April does it better.
I have no disagreement there.
What was the statement? Sorry.
Okay, all those in favor say
Merry
aye.
Christmas, Mayor.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. All those items carry as approved.
And thank you for repeating it seriously. That was important to do.
City manager reports, F1. Mr. Goosh.
Mayor and council, this is an important and exciting presentation to be giving to you. I promise it's in there somewhere. Going back to March of this past year, this council, under the leadership of Mayor Pro Tem Solis, called an ad hoc committee to begin reviewing the city's charter. The city's charter is its formation document, its constitution. You guys appointed members to a charter review committee, and that committee brings to you tonight its formal recommendations for your consideration. I'm going to go over in a bit more detail than I did on Friday, but still a 30,000-foot overview level of the work that has been done going up to this point. I want to start off by thanking the committee members. You see them listed there with the number of the district that they represented. J.P. Hull representing District 1, Mike Atkinson, District 2, who also chaired the committee. District 3 was represented by Dwayne Crocker, and I need to clarify that at the time of his appointment to that committee, he was not yet a council member. I want to thank him for continuing to serve on that committee after he saw how much work it was going to be and after his election when he could have appointed someone else. So thank you, Mr. Crocker, for continuing to serve on that committee.
I couldn't think anybody I could do that to.
It was a significant amount of work. District 4 is represented by Tony Kniebel, District 5 by Jeb Lacey, and District 6 by Decatur Joseph. That group of individuals got together and was assisted not only by the city attorney's office, but also by outside counsel Charlie Tceq. Charlie is an attorney with the firm of Denton, Navarro, Rocha, Bernal, and Tceq, and he is the statewide expert on home rule charters. When he was working through his Master's of Public Administration degree from Texas State University, he reviewed every home rule charter in the state of Texas and did an analysis comparing them and what provisions work and what provisions don't. So since that time, he has helped many, many cities amend their charters. He helped the city of Victoria back in 2012, the last time that our charter was reviewed. And I was pleased to have him sit beside me virtually through this entire process. His insight was invaluable, and his firm did a tremendous amount of legwork in getting these recommendations to you. Just quickly, a calendar of events of the committee. They began their work in July, and they met regularly through last week. They concluded their work on Wednesday of last week, and I apologize, Mayor and council members, for this PowerPoint not being in your materials for today. We literally have been trying to get it to you as quickly as possible, considering that the work was completed only a week ago. Last week on Friday, December 10th, I delivered to you each a 3-ring binder that had the committee's recommendations in it. And we briefly talked about how to navigate those. I'll go into a little bit more depth today, talking about the individual propositions and measures that are being recommended by the committee. But it's important to note, I'm still not asking for any formal decision or formal consideration tonight. I'll take any questions that you may have as we go through the various measures, but tonight is only an introduction to you and the community of what the recommendations from the committee have been. And before we move into the individuals, I'd like to start off by just inviting the committee chair, Mike Atkinson, to come to the podium again and to introduce the recommendations of the committee. Mike?
Thank you very much and good evening. It's been said that some work from sun to sun, but the work of the city council is just never seems to be done. And we appreciate the good work that you do. And I'm pleased to report that the work of our Charter Review Committee is done. City Charter is our constitution, our governing document, the framework by which we govern ourselves. Given that it is subject to the higher laws of our state and federal government, it is critical to the operation of our city government and its relationship with the citizenry. It was our task to see that it remains consistent with the higher laws, provides a legal, consistent, and fair means of self-governance for our community, that it looks to anticipate future changes in the law and provides a means to maintain local government in the face of disasters and loss of elected officials. I want to thank our committee. This was a team effort. Jonathan Hull, Dwayne Crocker, Tony Kniebel, Jeff Lacey, and Decatur Joseph. Special appreciation to Dwayne Crocker for remaining after the election to be part of our team. We appreciate his help. It was valuable. I also want to thank the City Council for the confidence shown to my appointment as chairman. I was honored. Thank you. As chairman, I observed our committee was intelligent, well-informed, and brought a range of experience and insight to this effort. All participated, bringing a range of thoughts and ideas to every point considered, discussed, and debated. Most of all, they were considerate of all points of view, respectful of each other's opinions, and kept the best interest of our city in mind. There was no partisanship and no unyielding demands. It made my job as chairman much easier. I didn't have to herd cats. I think back to World War II and to General George S. Patton, General of the Third Army, who told his staff, if everyone's thinking alike, nobody's thinking. As chairman, I encouraged ideas and debate. Sometimes lengthy and very interesting discussions ensued. Every point was thoughtfully considered. We voted on every decision, and we were unanimous in every vote but one, and there was only one dissent at that. I think that's a point of reassurance to the council and to the citizenry. I want to thank our city attorney, Thomas Gooch. Thomas provided assistance, guidance, experience, and advice we needed and appreciated. Thank you, Tom. Likewise, I want to thank Charlie Tceq. Charlie was our legal expert, consultant, and advisor. Charlie brought a lifetime of experience dedicated to the study of city charters and local government throughout Texas. His book, An Analysis of Texas Home Rule Charters, which was his applied research project for a master's in 2008 in public administration, is a valuable reference for the creation and maintenance of city charters in Texas. Charlie provided suggestions, advice, and guidance for the committee's consideration. He did not dominate our thinking, and nor was it his intent to do so. Charlie could see from 30,000 feet what we could not. And special appreciation to Charlie Tceq is due, and to Thomas for bringing him into this process. It's not my intent this evening to wade through the details of our recommendations at this time, but rather to provide a broad overview. Our committee had 5 meetings beginning in July, totaling about 12 hours conservatively, here in City Council chambers. It was not counting the many hours spent by committee members in private study. This was an example of my study material. This was involved, and it was quite fun and interesting. Our guiding principles to meet current laws and legal requirements of the state and federal government, to meet future changes in state and federal law with flexibility. Example, not rewriting for each change. We tried to design our charters so that as federal and state law changed, we wouldn't have to go back and modify it continually. Also to address future and current challenges. Example, mayoral and council succession, disasters and death that affect the reconstitution and the continuity of local leadership. This is what we did not do. We did not attempt to change our governance or the structure and operation of our city. We did not attempt to change any local laws or codes. We gave no consideration beneficial to any special interest. What we did do, we took a fresh start. We considered past history as wisdom for the future and maintained time-proven principles. We focused on our charter. Our consultant, Charlie Tceq, did not propose a standard form or charter for our consideration. This is our charter, beginning to end in the same order. We eliminated obsolete language and made the charter easier to read and understand for everyone's benefit. We eliminated conflicts with the current legal environment. There were conflicts with state and federal law that needed to be addressed, and so we did. The result, we believe, was a flexible document that does not require constant revision in the shadow of changing state and federal laws. It addresses what it can for Victoria's benefit and defers to higher law as necessary to avoid legal missteps and potential litigation. It addresses current and future challenges. Example, mayoral succession, disasters and death that would require a reconstitution for continuity of local leadership and governance. Future-proofing. Our committee worked hard to anticipate future challenges and incorporate as best we could points that could be useful in unforeseen situations that just arise. So now, is our job done? Well, mostly. Our committee remains to answer your questions and assist council as you review and perhaps modify and refine our recommendations. Likewise, we are here when the time comes to offer this to the voters and help move this effort across the finish line. Considering the need to revise our charter and all the time and effort we put forth, we hope for success and will assist council in every way we can to bring about this success. Again, I thank all the members of the committee, city attorney, Charlie Tceq for their fine work here, and council that you had for your confidence in us. Thank you. This was a serious, interesting, and quite frankly, a fun project. I was glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for your service to the committee. It was a tremendous amount of work. When he talks about the number of hours that the committee spent on this, some of those meetings ran until after 9 o'clock at night. And they were exciting, passionate discussions about what it means to have local governance. So thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it. So with that, where do we go from here? This is the last meeting of December. Merry Christmas, in case I don't see any of you before then. In January, council will give formal consideration to the recommendation of the committee. And by the end of January or the first meeting in February, I expect that council will order the election. It would be a special election held in conjunction with the general election for council member seats. And then that election would be on May 7th of 2022. At this stage, all that is before you are recommendations. Nothing is set in stone, and council can still tweak these recommendations as we go forward. But because of that, and because the community is going to be giving input, I want to start with just two quick foundational concepts that must guide any discussion about the charter. First, the Home Rule Charter does establish our local self-governance, but it is authorized by the Texas Constitution. The state constitution allows cities of more than 5,000 people to create a charter for self-governance. That means that we are limited in our charter by state law. We can only do the things that state law allow us to do. The charter was initially adopted by the voters, and that means any amendment to the charter must be done also by the voters. And that's really the second of the two foundational concepts, is that if we're going to amend the charter, council doesn't amend the charter itself. The committee doesn't amend the charter itself. All that the committee has done is made a recommendation to you, and all that you will do is propose those changes to the voters. I hesitate on that word propose because they're called propositions when they get to the voters. Council is going to make these proposals, and it's up to the voters to decide whether or not they want to approve them. Under state law, each subject must be a separate ballot measure. So I'll use that word ballot measure to describe the various amendments that are being proposed by council. It's an important distinction that each subject matter must be different because, as has already been pointed out by Mayor Pro Tem Solis, there are a couple of places in here, I think it's measure F and G, where you have two changes to the same paragraph. And if you look at those two back to back, it looks like we forgot about measure F when we were considering measure G. It's done that way on purpose because it may be that the voters only approve one and not both of those, okay? So in each one of the measures, you have to take the red line individually to see how it all adds up together. There's an easier way to review all of this than to look at each individual measure. And that is to look at a red line of the whole document. And that is posted on the website. I'll show you where in just a second. Finally, as a foundational matter, cities are prohibited from revisiting their charter for 2 years after we call an election. So not again until after 2 years have passed can we review this. But quite frankly, it'll likely be much longer. The last time that the city charter was reviewed was in 2012. And so it's been 10 years basically since it was last reviewed. This is my copy of the 1957 city charter. A friend of mine handed this to me and said he found it, I think, in his mother's garage. Much of the language from this original 1957 charter still exists in today's city charter, including, by the way, a paragraph that said this charter becomes effective on this date in 1957. It's one of the things we're going to remove this time around. So the decisions that were made were considered very seriously because they're going to impact our community for a long, long time. These documents, all of the propositions, the measures, and the red line of the total document are available right now online at www.victoriatx.gov/charter. There's some brief background information, including a thank you to the committee members. There is a red line of the entire document if you want to read it front to back. The additions have been underlined and the deletions have been struck out so that you can, if you're used to reading red line documents, you can kind of see how the new document will look as you go through. And then each individual proposition is listed below that. If you click on any one of the propositions, it'll open up a draft of what that measure will actually do. Again, the proposition language is what will be on the ballot. And that's what I'm going to walk through tonight. I'm going to walk through each of the propositions and allow you an opportunity to ask any questions you may have. I don't intend to dive all the way into the red line of each document. We'll save that for January. You guys have only had this for about 3 or 4 days now, and I don't expect that you've had a chance to thoroughly review everything. So when we come back to this in January, you'll have more of an opportunity to really dig into the red line and make sure that all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So the propositions all look like this. They're lettered A through N. There are 14 of them. And they will all be proposed in this format. And this is what the voters will see on the ballot should you choose to put this on the ballot when you call the election. Proposition A is amending the charter of the city of Victoria by deleting and amending those provisions which are redundant of state law, duplicative of other sections of the charter, or otherwise unnecessary for placement in the charter, and to provide clarity. This is simply the cleanup of things that are in the charter that are unnecessary in the charter. This one measure, if you look at the red line, is 12 pages. So there is a lot of detail that goes into this one, but it's only one proposition on the ballot because it's all one subject matter, cleanup. Proposition B is amending the charter by deletion and revision to require and ensure compliance with state law. As I mentioned already, we have to comply with state law in our charter, and state law drifts. Every legislative session, every 2 years in Austin, state law drifts a little bit. And since we haven't updated our charter in 10 years, there are 4 pages of cleanup that need to be done because state law has changed. And that's what Proposition B stands for. Interrupt me at any time with any questions you may have. Proposition C is amending the charter to add that all current and future elected officials are ineligible to serve in the same office for a period of 1 year after serving 4 consecutive elected terms in that office. This is a term limit provision. And what it means is that city council members will be prohibited from serving more than 4 consecutive full terms in their seat. A council member could move from, say, a single-member district to a super district, or from a super district to the mayor, and thereby serve more than 12 years. Likewise, they could choose to sit out for 1 year or 1 election cycle and then run again for their same seat. But it would implement a term limit of 4 consecutive terms.
And the clock starts when on that if it was passed?
And the clock would start when it's passed. That was a question that was raised earlier today. It is not intended that current service term would apply. And in fact, when we actually get to considering the red line, I might suggest a clarification that says, provided however that it's not intended that any term prior to May 7th, 2022, the election date, be counted in this term limit.
I had a question about the logistics of not the term limit part, but the logistics of, you said sit out a year. And I guess a year is as good a number to put as any, and that's what I came back to, because to rerun for the same position, it doesn't come available again but every 3 years.
You're right.
And so you could change positions, but this allows that anyway.
You can change positions without sitting out any period of time. The reason the 1 year is in there rather than a full 3-year term is because you may have vacancies for other reasons, okay? As with Mayor Rowley's passing, you may have had a situation where somebody could have run for that seat again after having sat out if the prior mayor wanted to run to be mayor again to fill that vacancy.
Okay, that makes sense, because I was thinking of the appointment potential, but that's only in the last 180 days, so I couldn't make the year make sense. But so you're just talking about really odd circumstances.
From a practical standpoint, it will typically be 1 term that gets sat out. You're right.
Thank you.
Sure. Proposition D is amending the city charter to provide that the city council may, upon a vacancy occurring on city council with less than 180 days remaining in the term, leave a position vacant, appoint a new council member to fill such vacancy, or call a special election to fill that vacancy. If there is more than 180 days remaining in the term, the state constitution requires that we fill it. But if there is less, we have the flexibility to either appoint or call an election or simply leave it vacant. Yes, sir.
Just for clarification's sake, so can you go back one?
Yes.
So this one very specifically says 4 consecutive elected terms.
Yes.
So if you go to the next one, if there's a scenario where someone's appointed to fill a term,
Yes.
that's not an elected.
Yes.
So somebody could be appointed and then still be elected 4 times.
Within the specific measure, if you click through into the measure of Proposition C, which is the term limit, it specifically calls a distinction between elected and appointed. If a person were elected into this partial term, it would count towards the 4 terms. But if they are appointed into that partial term, it would not count. That's the recommendation of the committee.
Want to make sure it's verbalized out loud.
Yeah.
Should it say full term then, on the term limits?
That was not the recommendation of the committee.
Okay.
Yeah. Subject of significant debate that evening, but this was where they ultimately landed.
And so they debated even the concept of term limits, because we don't have those currently.
Correct. The current charter does not have term limits at all. This would be an entirely new provision in our charter. Moving on to Proposition E, which has to do with park property, and it would authorize leases or concessions of parkland be conducted consistent with the requirements of state law. Currently, our charter says that you cannot sell parkland unless it goes back to the voters. That is consistent with state law. But this provision in the current charter also says that we cannot lease park property for more than 20 years. And the committee wanted to remove that 20-year limitation in order to allow for a ground lease of 100 years or something similar to that. And so this doesn't fall under Proposition A, duplicative of state law, because of the change it's making to the term or potential term of leases. Proposition F would provide that if the mayor and mayor pro tem are absent, sick, or unable to perform the duties of their office, then the next most senior member of city council shall perform the duties of mayor. You'll remember during the term when Mayor pro tem Solis was serving in Mayor McCoy's after he had passed, there were a couple of meetings where she was unable to make it, and we had to go through a complicated process of appointing a member to serve in that. This simply covers that eventuality should we ever get into that situation again. The most senior member of city council would perform the duties of mayor. And note, it does not say become mayor, would not assume the title of mayor, would simply fulfill the duties.
What's the tiebreaker?
Good question. I'll look into that. Right? If two council members were appointed or elected at the same election, you mean?
Coin flip.
That is a great
Coin flip,
question.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Flip a coin.
Or one goes into a runoff, right?
Hey, if one goes into a runoff, then it's no tie, right?
Yeah.
Andrew and I.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Proposition G is amending the charter to provide that a mayor pro tem shall be elected by the city council at the first regular city council meeting following each regular city election. It currently says that the mayor pro tem serves until the expiration of her current term, and that has provided some confusion in the past. And so this is simply clarifying that we will elect a mayor pro tem each year that we have a regular city council meeting.
But not special elections.
Correct, not special elections, only regular elections. Thank you. Proposition H would amend the charter to provide that all adopted ordinances and the city's code be published on the city website and electronically, respectively. The code currently says that they must be printed in a newspaper of general circulation within the city. That will stay. But then it says, and may be published online if it's not contrary to law. And the recommendation from the committee is to make that mandatory, that it be published online. So we currently may publish them online, and they want to require it. Proposition I would amend the charter to provide that all assistant city attorneys are to be appointed and removed by the city attorney. The charter currently says that all assistant city attorneys are appointed by the city attorney and confirmed by city council, but it does not address the removal. And so there's some ambiguity about whether or not city council must confirm the removal. Now, thankfully, in the 12 years I've been the city attorney, I've never had to fire an assistant city attorney, and I hope that never happens. But this is intended to clarify that upon removal, that's a decision of the city attorney. It also removes the confirmation from city council from this process. That is something that was just considered to be antiquated. Proposition J clarifies the powers and duties of the city attorney. Another provision that was antiquated set out several specific duties for the city attorney's office, and this simply updates the language to say that the city attorney is the attorney for the city and city council. It also adds in the ability for city council to hire special outside counsel for certain projects, as you have done in the past. The charter allows that currently, but it's through silence. It doesn't prohibit it, so we allow that. And you'll remember, for example, when you were considering my employment contract, I can't provide city council advice about my own contract because that would be a conflict of interest. You hired an outside attorney to help guide through that process, and it worked very smoothly. The committee is recommending that we simply add that into the charter in order to make that clear. Proposition K would require the council to adopt an ordinance which provides appropriate signatory authority for checks, vouchers, or warrants for the withdrawal of money from a city depository. Currently, what the charter says is that the director of finance must sign for all removals of money from the depository, and the city manager must countersign. Requiring ink signatures on paper is an outdated way of doing business. And by the way, Mr. Reyna's title is no longer Director of Finance, it's now Chief Financial Officer. And so this is essentially a cleanup and modernization process. Proposition L would amend the charter to change the term qualified voter to registered voter in the article dealing with initiative recall and referendum petitions. So within the charter currently, it says that the petition must contain the signatures of qualified voters. And it also must include the registration, the voter registration number of each signer. In my opinion, bless you. In my opinion, the current charter was intended to mean registered voter when it said qualified voter, and I think this just cleans that up so that the terminology is consistent throughout that article. Proposition M would require the city officials to comply with state law regarding conflicts of interest. Our current city charter does prohibit conflicts of interest, but it does so through an arcane and outdated method that is no longer followed in state law. Chapter 171 and 176 of the Local Government Code currently cover and prohibit conflicts of interest in the dealing of city officials in any contracts for business. And the charter being outdated language simply doesn't match up with that, and there are some cases where it is overly broad, and there are some places where it's overly narrow. And so the committee's recommendation is to simply fall back on state law and to include a provision that specifically says we don't want our city officials to be self-dealing through conflicts of interest, and that they must follow Chapter 171 of the Local Government Code. So this is the one place where the charter would still refer to state law. Proposition N, this is an entirely new provision. It's the last one on the list. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this. There have been a very few unique situations in Texas that I'm aware of where more than a quorum of the city council was removed simultaneously. The situation that I'm aware of happened in, I believe it was Killeen, Texas, where a recall petition removed more than a quorum of city council. City council then can't conduct business because you can't have a quorum and you can't do anything without a quorum. There isn't a quorum that exists. And so in situations like that, or situations that might arise due to disasters, we need a way to reconstitute the city council for the purpose of calling an election to fill those vacant seats. If you can't bring together a quorum, you can't even order an election to fill those seats. And so there were some interesting legal hurdles that had to be overcome in those cities. And so now it is becoming more common practice to include a disaster provision in the charter that explains how to reconstitute city council. And here within our charter, there are several steps depending on which council members are removed from council, whether the mayor is still active or not. I urge you to read this provision carefully, ask a lot of questions about it, so that by the time it goes to the public, we all have a good understanding of what you're recommending to the public for consideration. And that's it for tonight. Are there any questions that you may have for me this evening?
No, I want to say thank you, Thomas, for leading the effort. Mr. Atkinson, thank you so much for chairing it, and thank you to the committee members. We appreciate you again answering yes when we called. Thank you, Mr. Crocker. And we appreciate the work that y'all went into this, and I've already read through it once, and I will do my homework and read through it again.
It's a tremendous amount of information. It is very dense. Take your time, analyze it, think through it, ask lots of questions.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Executive session?
Not needed.
Not needed. Adjourned.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.